Hey kids, welcome back to Rob's Guide to Hearts of Iron 3. It's been a while since I've made any of these videos. I have been preparing a new series on combat, which is the one thing that is missing from my tutorial so far. These videos take a little bit longer to prepare, require a little bit of research and kind of preparing save files to demonstrate things, because I want to demonstrate things kind of in real time rather than just talking about them abstractly. But I've got 5 videos in this series coming up. So this one is going to be about land combat basics. We are going to be looking at individual battles and how they work and what's happening in a battle so that you can understand why you're winning or losing battles and what factors are contributing to that. Next episode we will talk about defensive strategies kind of on a more front-wide scale. So how do you defend, say, the Soviet Union against Germany? How do you defend France against Germany? And other things like that. And then in the third episode we will talk about offensive strategies, how to encircle your enemies and defeat them as quickly as possible and painlessly as possible. And then I'll do a video on air combat and a video on naval combat, where I'll talk about both the sort of mechanics of those aspects of the game as well as some broader strategies to follow. So without further ado, let's get started. I've set up here a Soviet campaign. It is November 30th of 1939, which means that we have started I just fired the Finnish Winter War event. So we are at war with Finland. And before we get started, I want to point out a couple things. So obviously, if you're going to go to war with a country, you're going to want to mobilize before you declare war. It takes about 3 weeks to mobilize, and you're going to want to set your IC here to prioritize reinforcement. We've actually reinforced all of our units now, so I should set it back to prioritize, I think it was prioritize upgrades, yeah. There are a few things you should do before you start a war in this game. I like to go into message settings. I don't usually use the same message settings when I'm at peace than I do when I'm at war. Typically, well, there's a few ways to play this game. Obviously, there's a lot of micromanagement, especially in land combats. And some people will like to play on like speed 1 or 2 or 3 and really just sort of let things go in real time and try and flip around the front and respond to different areas as things come up, just kind of following what's happening here or maybe in the log or things like that. But I find that a bit slow paced for my liking. I tend to play on speed 4 when I'm in a kind of combat intensive situation, or occasionally speed 3. And when I'm not in a combat situation, I tend to play on speed 5. But what I do is I set up pop-up and pause notifications. So just to briefly go over this, I don't think I've looked at this yet in this series. You've got all these types of notifications, and there's these different tabs for the different categories. These ones here, this little hourglass makes a window pop up and it pauses the game. This one here displays stuff in the log, which is here, we can open it here. This log down here, and that's somewhat useful. I put some kind of secondary things so that I can go and check if something happens and I missed it or whatever. I can go check in that log. And then you've got a pop-up here without pausing the game, and you've got these are the little yellow text that pops up on the provinces on the actual map. I don't find those that useful, but you may find them useful. You can play around with these. But the most important thing for me is there's about 4 or 5 things that I would set up for land combat, and I'll go over this for air combat as well. So let's just go to the combat tab here. Number 1, you should always have when one of our land units is attacked by the enemy as a pop-up and pause. I think it's usually worthwhile to have the game pause when you're attacked. If the enemy attacks you in some far-off place, you are not going to see it. It will appear up here, but you might not see it, and that battle could be over before you even see it happening, and then you could look over there and find that there's a gaping hole in your front because one of your units is retreated, and that's just a bad scene. So I would put when one of our land units is attacked by the enemy. I think that's really important. I would also put when a land battle is over. I will demonstrate why in this tutorial. But when land battles end, the pop-up gives you a lot of useful information about what happened, and so you may you can put these as pop-ups that don't pause the game if you just want to jam the spacebar every time one pops up. I prefer to have them actually pause the game for me. That's entirely up to you. It just depends on your playstyle. To experiment with both and see what works. but I prefer it to pop up and pause the game. But either this or this, you're going to want both. This one just overrides that one, by the way. When you lose control of province is another important one. Sometimes you'll have a hole in your front, and you won't notice that an enemy division has just walked into your territory. And so you're going to want to know about that. And so when you lose control of one of your provinces is a very important one. I set that to pop up and pause. When one of our divisions has been shattered is a fairly important one, especially if you are fighting on the defensive, or if you are just fighting really hard in general. Divisions shatter because their strength hits 0. Their strength hits 0 because you are either out of manpower, which is a very bad thing, or your industrial capacity is not, you're not allocating enough resources to reinforce those units because you're building too many things. So you're building too many new divisions and your old divisions aren't receiving reinforcements. You want to know if this happens. If this happens, you got some serious problems that you need to address. Also, one of the things that will happen a little bit more often than an actual division shattering is something like a corps or army HQ shattering, because they have very low stats and they can easily be shattered in combat if they get kind of snagged and surrounded and stuck. And what will happen then is your HQ will automatically respawn at the capital, which means that it will be out of range of all of the units it's commanding. So that will create, and it might have a bad leader if you have an auto-assigned leader selected. So you want to know if that happens, and I would want the game to pause when that happens, so that I can kind of assess the situation. There's one last one that's actually in the units section here, and I'm going to leave it unticked for now, but it's a good thing to know about, and I will remind you of this next episode when we talk about defensive strategies. When one of our land units arrives at its destination, this is useful in a couple of situations. First of all, if you're fighting all over the world, like so if I'm playing as like the UK or maybe even Italy or Japan, I've got stuff going on here, I've got stuff going on here, I've got stuff maybe going on here. And I've given units orders. I want to know when they arrive at their destination so that I can give them new orders. Also, if your units have lost a battle and they're retreating, you lose control of them. Now, as soon as they get to the province that they're retreating into, you regain control, and so I want to know when I've regained that control to give them fresh orders. If not, they will just sit there and get attacked again and retreat again and probably get overrun and encircled, and you'll lose that division. So if I look at this front here, I'm not going to go into any detail here. I'm just going to throw a bunch of troops into the battle, and we're going to see what happens. Let's just take all these guys here and throw them in there, okay? 5 infantry divisions, standard infantry divisions with artillery brigades, and we're just going to, I'm going to go down to maybe speed 3, maybe even less, because I really want to slow this down here, and I want to show you guys what happens. So we've right-clicked and moved them to the province. We see the little yellow text there. That's the province pop-up. So that was this guy here. That says battle started or whatever. Like I don't even notice them at this point. So you may like them or you may not. Now, as soon as the battle starts, you have this up here that says land combat, and it tells you the name of the province where the battle's occurring. If you get really lost, you can click on this. So if I'm way over here, looking at the complete lack of my defenses on the Eastern Front, and then I realize, oh shit, there's a battle going on, and I click over there, it's going to bring me to the battle. It's going to center me on that province. And we get this little pop-up screen here, and this is what I'm going to be spending most of our time in this episode looking at. Stupid border. Most of our time in this episode looking at. There's a lot going on here, and this is where you're going to get a lot of key information about battles. Let's just start from the top here. So we can see that there are up here, this is the retreat button. By the way, if you want to retreat your units, I don't recommend using this. Unless perhaps you're in like a naval battle or an air battle. This will retreat your units, but you will not get to decide which direction they go. We're also the attacking side here, so we can't retreat. We can just stop the battle, basically. But that's, it's there. Next we have, the attackers on the left and the defenders on the right. It tells us what kind of terrain that we're in. There's a bunch of notifications here, which won't really tell you very much. It kind of describes them. It doesn't really give you any modifiers. And there's a better place to look for details on these. But once you start to know the modifiers, these actually will be useful because you'll see, oh, there's a stacking penalty. Now, it doesn't really tell you who the stacking penalty is affecting, really, sort of. It does tell you that there's a stacking penalty there, and then you can check and see what's going on there. And you've got, you know, other kind of stuff going on here that just indicates what modifiers are in play. Here you have you have the two leaders. So I've got this rather shabby corps leader, Lieutenant General Rose here, and then you've got the opposing general. We can see what his traits are and what his skill are. So they're actually evenly matched. And then you can see here the combat tactics. I have mentioned combat tactics in the past. They're fairly important. I'm just going to flip over to the wiki page because that's the best source of information for them very quickly. So the wiki page here on combat tactics is one of the few pages that seems to be up to date for their finest hour. A lot of the wiki is not, but this is one page that I do recommend, and I will paste a link in the description. And here you'll see all of the combat tactics. So basically you've got a combat tactic, some of which are, you can sort them here, some of which are attacker, like offensive tactics, and some of which are defensive tactics. Many tactics, not all of them are countered by another tactic. So we can see here that encirclement is countered by tactical withdrawal, delay is circled by shock, etc., etc. And these tactics have requirements. I talked about this in the leaders tutorial. Some of them only apply to armored units. Some of them you have to have a better leader. Some of them you have to have a leader with certain traits. So usually offensive doctrine panzer leader or defensive doctrine for some as well. And you can see that a lot of these tactics have like the basic attack and defend have a base chance of 15%. Whereas these other tactics, some of them have a chance of 1%, and some of them have no chance unless you research the doctrines associated with them. And you can see as well here, they all have effects, right? So this is just kind of a reminder about how these work. So we have no control over this in Hearts of Iron 3. It's basically a random dice roll. The only way we can have an influence on it is by researching doctrines. So you can see the doctrines here. I talked about this in technology a bit. You know, the elastic defense for elastic defense and backhand blow, and tactical withdrawal. And then you've got blitz, masterful blitz. You've got here's encirclement, assault, reckless assault. You can see the percentage increases. So, you know, if you want to be using better tactics than the basic attack, you're going to want to have a higher percentage than, say, you know, 2 to use that tactic. Anyway, so and you can see here that this is a basic attack, counter attack, and you can see the bonuses they give. So attacker damage bonus +5, defender damage bonus +5. Neither tactic counters the other. And so these two basically cancel each other out. They're not really going to affect tactics are not going to affect the outcome of this battle so far. The tactics change every few hours or something. There's a dice roll and they change. So something to keep in mind, and not really something that you can directly influence, but something that's kind of fun to watch actually if you're playing the game a bit slower paced. Right, then we get into the real useful information, which is all down here. So, first of all, we see combat width, and I've talked about combat width before. Every province has a basic combat width of 10, and 10 is basically 10 combat brigades. So, if we look at this corps I've attacked with here, it's actually I'm attacking with 5, so I'm actually attacking with 15 brigades. We can see here again, each one of these has 3 infantry brigades. The artillery doesn't count because it fights from the back row. It's not to be confused with your back row support brigades and your frontline brigades. But you've also got the units that are on the front and the units that are in reserve. So we can see that of the 5 divisions in the Corps HQ that I ordered into battle, only 4 of them have actually entered the battle. Right? And so we can see that we have 4 units in combat. That's the 4 divisions with a width of 12 brigades. Now, one little thing I've mentioned before, and I'll repeat it again now, if you go over the combat width or the frontage, basically synonymous, of your province that you're attacking, but the brigades spill over into an extra division, it doesn't actually count. So 12 width actually counts as 10 in this case. However, we have extra stuff in reserve here, which is going to create a stacking penalty, right? And we'll look at the modifiers now more directly. So the best way to look at the modifiers is to actually hover over your individual divisions here. Now, different divisions are going to have different modifiers because armor, it doesn't have the same terrain penalties as infantry, mountain divisions and things like that will fare better in certain circumstances. You've got piercing, you've got other things depending on how your divisions are set up. But this is how you should, if you have a battle that doesn't seem to be going the way that you were hoping, you're going to get the most information from here basically. So let's just look at what we have going on here. We've got experience coming from the leader. We've got combined arms, which is by the fact that I have artillery in my infantry divisions, is giving me a small combined arms bonus. We have a stacking penalty of -8, and that's because we have these extra divisions in reserve here. We have a terrain penalty of -12.5 something. That's a really small number, I can't read it. So look at the simplified terrain map here, and I would advise that I purposely started this battle without looking at the terrain map, but if you are planning an offensive, I would advise that you use the simplified terrain map. It will give you the most information. And so we can see that this is a woods province. If we hover over this here in the province screen, we can see that there's a movement costs and there is an attack penalty, -10%, as well as a little attrition penalty, which is not affecting us right now because we're not in the province. So there we go. That's our terrain penalty. The weather penalty you can't really do anything about. You can, of course, use the weather map mode, which is I find it quite attractive map mode with the sort of icy bits up here and everything, but not that useful on a regular basis. We can see that the ground is 25% frozen, and so that's really where our terrain penalty. It's -8.9 degrees Celsius, and so that's where our weather penalty is coming from. You can look at this map before you plan an attack if you really want to, and wait until the weather clears up. The most important thing to keep in mind is that winter offensives, like the Soviet winter war in Finland, are going to be much, much riskier, and the attacker is going to be at a major disadvantage. So something to keep in mind. Night modifier for land combat is going to apply to everyone equally. At the end of the day, you don't need to worry about whether it's day or night because everyone's going to suffer a penalty on both sides, so it actually basically cancels itself out. You could hypothetically research night fighting equipment way, way, way early. I've never done this before, actually. It could be kind of interesting to have just a flat 10% bonus in all-night combat for the entire war. Try and get this in like 1940 or something. You'd start right in 1936 and see how long it takes you to do this, like level 10 tech or whatever. But that's the only tech that really affects night combat. For air and naval, night and day do kind of matter, and mostly in terms of what techs you do. But you don't have much say over what time of day battles happen. You don't have much say over what the weather is because the enemy can also attack you. So those are really factors that you can't control very much. Now, obviously, we've got leader skill, and we've got, sorry, I said experience. I confused those two, actually. So leader skill is the skill level 1 of the leader. Experience is actually the experience of the unit. So we can see that we have 18.473 experience there. You don't really need to pay much attention to this. The thing you're going to want to do generally is pass specialist training here, which will give starting experience. So this is a unit that was on the map at the beginning of the game when that started with the advanced training. So it's not as experienced a unit as one might like. You can see that they actually have more experience, 19.5. Anything else? So we've got attacker damage bonus, which comes from the attack tactic here. And then we have the piercing attack and armor stats, which are given there in yellow at the bottom. And that's going to be important whenever you have armor. There is no armor presence. Finland does not have any armor, so that we won't really be looking at piercing in this episode. We'll certainly be looking at it soon enough. But yeah, so this is how you look at the modifiers. There are other modifiers that you're not seeing here. So just something to keep in mind. This is the best source of information. If you want to get a quick snapshot, but without looking into this in detail, look at the attack modifier and defend modifier in yellow at the top. So you'll see attack modifier 44.8%, defend modifier 131.2. Now we're going to come over here and look at the at our opponents. Their attack modifier is 59%. Now they're not on the attack. Their defend modifier is 173.2. So the odds are actually stacked against me in this battle, and in terms of the pure modifiers. Now, you can win a battle simply by throwing more divisions at them within reason, although stacking penalty is a big deal. And if you throw 15 divisions into this battle, you will get a very bad stacking penalty, and you will probably actually lose the battle by basically overstacking the fronts. But these modifiers are important, so what will happen in this battle is these two divisions will lose, but we're going to take a lot more losses than we need to because of the modifiers here. And we can see, so let's take a look at why their defensive position is so much better than ours. Well, obviously they are not paying a terrain penalty, which we are, so they're not paying that 12% penalty. The weather penalty is the same, doesn't change. They do have more experienced units. They have better training, basically, better training laws. Their leader's skill is basically the same. Yeah, basically identical. And then they also have a territorial pride modifier. Territorial pride is a modifier that certain countries get when they're on the defensive. It's just a flat modifier. Finland gets a strategic effect during the Winter War that just gives them a bunch of modifiers to simulate how heroic the Finns were in defending their country against the Soviet Union when they were invaded in 1939. They did a pretty bang-up job considering the odds were 10 to 1 against them. And then yeah, we just see the sort of, so that's, we can sort of see that they basically have less negative modifiers stacked up against them. They also don't have a stacking penalty. So in order to make this attack more efficient, there's a few things I can do. Mostly the only thing I can do is get rid of the stacking penalty for the most part. So, and I can probably do a little bit about the terrain penalty, and I can also change the leader. So the leader here is a very low-level leader. The battle will be led by the highest rank leader. And if all leaders are equal rank, it will be led, in most cases, by the highest skill leader. So one of the things we can do is this corps is not a combat brigade, so we can take the corps out of combat. So to do that, we'll just select the corps here and take it out of the battle. Now be careful when you're doing this, because if you only have one division on the actual front line, so not down here but on the actual front line, and you take it out of combat, you're going to retreat from the battle, and you don't want to do that. Yeah, and that will lead to attack delay and stuff like that, and we don't want that. But I'll get into that later. So yeah, we've got the stacking penalty of 8%, and so I can also take this division here out of combat, because I think that's actually contributing to the stacking penalty. So that's the 191st. I'm careful to look at the name of the actual division here so that I don't take the wrong one. The last thing I want to do is take one of these out of combat. So let's take the 191st out of combat, and it's right here. It's actually got the best general, which is kind of a shame to take Zhukov out of this battle, but we're going to. And now we are at 12 width. Our stacking penalty is gone, and Konev is leading the battle. So yeah, that's going to give us a pretty major boost overall in terms of the outcome of the battle. The other thing we can do if we want is we can support the attack. So we're using up all of our combat width, 12 out of 10. Actually, we're even slightly spilling over our combat width here. But from every province that you attack from, let's get out of the weather map mode and go back to the simple terrain map mode here. Every province that you attack from adds 5 combat width to the battle. So the battle itself has 10 basically. Every border between provinces, you can see the borders between provinces here. This is also where you would check if there was a river crossing. Every vector of attack is 10 on its own, and then any additional one is 5. So 5 combat width will allow us to throw 6 more combat brigades, because these divisions are in stacks of 2. Now I don't want to throw this corps in because it's not a combat one. However, because it is a woods tile, I could take these 2 mountain divisions and throw them in, because they actually have a good terrain bonus. So let's actually, but we don't necessarily want them to move into this province, so let's control, right click, and hit support attack. You can actually adjust the time that the attack begins if you want to synchronize your attacks. I don't really recommend doing that. And yeah, so we can do that. And let's go back to the screen here. We're going to unpause again, finally, and there we go. Now you'll notice that these divisions that I've just added into the battle are actually they're not actually on the front line. They're still in reserve. I know this is very slow, but I'm really trying to show you all the details here. So their reinforcement chance is only 1%. And reinforcement chance I've mentioned in passing a few times in this tutorial series. It's a very, very important mechanic. And when you are dealing with difficult battles, particularly on the defense, you need to understand how reinforcement chance works. So if I want to increase the reinforcement chance of these 2 divisions, which are pretty valuable divisions and are really going to help, there's a few things I can do. First of all, I forgot to mention, you can see here that this number used to be 10, it's now 15. We're still at 12 width though. Let's see what we can do to change the reinforcement chance. Well, one thing we can do to get a reinforcement chance boost is get a better corps leader. We've got this shitty old guard skill 1 corps leader in charge of the 2nd corps here. So I can now look here. Let's just find there we go. We'll take an offensive doctrine corps leader here. Let's skill 3. And that should increase our reinforcement chance. Yeah, it's gone right up to 2% right away. Now, obviously, going from 1 to 2%, you're doubling it, but it's still not that great. If you want to have better reinforcement chance, there are 2 more things you can do. You're going to really want to research Grand Battle Plan. It's only 1939, so I haven't done it yet as a Soviet Union. And it's going to give you a flat plus 5% combat reinforcement chance, so that's really huge. There are also certain countries will have access to the Chief of Staff with the offensive doctrine or the defensive doctrine, which will give either a defensive reinforcement chance or an offensive reinforcement chance. So you can actually change your Chief of Staff to affect the outcome of a battle, which is a little bit weird, but kind of cool and something to keep in mind. It really makes a big difference. Your reinforcement chance will jump up by, like, I don't know, 5% or something, which is insane. To clarify what this means, though, basically a dice is rolled every, I think, hour or 2. I think it's every hour. So this would mean we have a 1 in 50 chance of this division reinforcing every hour. It's something like that. I'm not going to do a lot of the detailed math in this because it's not something that's important to keep in mind. The same goes, by the way, for stacking. I know that the calculations are a bit weird with your reserve divisions and the divisions that are on the front. I would never expect people to actually count the brigades. I usually grab 4 divisions, throw them into combat, grab some more in this one, throw them into combat, open up the battle interface here, and if I see that there's a stacking penalty, then I carefully and selectively remove some of the reserve divisions. Be careful, though, because if I remove these 2 divisions, then I lose the additional combat width that comes from attacking from 2 sides. The other thing that's important on this screen is to look at the strength of your units and, more importantly, the organization. So if you want to get a sense of how a battle's going, there's this percentage modifier thing here, which is not always reliable because it doesn't seem to differentiate between reserve and frontline. These divisions still haven't reinforced. There we go, 1 has reinforced. So now we're actually at 15 width. So we actually probably can't have this division in combat or we'll get a stacking penalty. Yeah, we probably should actually take one of these. Technically, we should take one of them out. So the 68th there, which one is that? The 68th we can take out, and then we won't have a stacking penalty because we were already at 12. So if we go to 18, we will hit a stacking penalty. And then, yeah, so we can get a sense here. Our attack modifier has now gone up to 100. So they retreated. They retreated because which was the smart thing to do, actually. If I was the human player as Finland and I got caught in that situation, I would retreat across this river here on this fortified province. And we'll see just how hard it is to take these fortified provinces. It is not necessarily easy. But they've retreated. This is why I like the pop-up and pause menu, because it shows that we lost 148 troops and that they lost 416. You want to pay attention to this. You don't have to look at every single battle and read it like a damage report kind of thing, but if you have a particularly major battle, sometimes battles will go on for days and days and days, even months. It's possible for battles to go on for months. I mean, think about Stalingrad, right? You're going to want to know how bad the losses are. Yeah, this is a good pop-up to have, and it's good to check on these every once in a while unless you're pretty sure that things went pretty well. I would probably have not really checked for this battle because I sort of know what's going to happen, right? Right, so you'll notice that these guys have been given the support attack order, and you'll notice that their move orders actually should cancel. Yeah, it's canceled. So it takes a second for it to cancel, but I wanted to keep those divisions in this province because they're more useful here than over there, I think. And now we've got these units moving in here. Now you see this little X here? This is the attack delay. Every time a unit has attacked, by the way, when a unit is attacking, it is moving during the attack. So if the battle takes a long time, the unit will actually usually arrive in the province faster. That is affected by this doctrine here, attack movement. The operational level command structure affects how quickly they move while they're attacking. So they'll arrive in the provinces where the battle has occurred faster after the battle is done. We can see here, if we look over here, we can see that they're going to be there on the 11th of December, so that's like in a week or more. They're only moving at 1.41 kilometers per hour, and that's because of terrain and the weather. We're getting huge penalties because of terrain and weather. So they're moving at, they're only covering a kilometer in an hour, so they're going to cover, I don't know, 24 kilometers in a day or something, which is pretty slow. And yeah. So all important things to keep in mind. If you want to reduce the attack delay, you're going to want to research operational level organization. Almost every country, even minor countries, should research this. If you are on the defensive and your attack delay is low, every time if you try and counterattack and your counterattack fails, your units are stuck. They can't retreat. They're not going to be able to get out of there. Well, they can retreat if they're attacked, but basically you can end up with a lot of units that are stuck and a very slow-moving front, and so you want to research this technology and keep it up to date, and some countries may even want to research it ahead of time. And this is actually a good example of why you might want to put this guy here when a unit arrives at its destination. So if I put this on here, it's actually quite useful. I can go to speed 5 for the purpose of this tutorial, which I don't necessarily recommend. And just like that. Oh, okay, whoa. So we actually didn't arrive in the province because what happened is the Finnish sent a division across there, and they actually got there first. And then this other battle has started again. So now these 4 divisions are now fighting this individual Finnish division. Now, obviously, they're going to crush the division. They've got attack modifier of 100, and they've got a defend modifier of 158. We actually see there's the tactic we're using right now is breakthrough. So we get attacker damage bonus of plus 25%, attacker speed of plus 50, which is quite useful. And they only have the defender damage bonus of 5%. So we're getting pretty good modifiers. One of the disadvantages of a situation like this, though, is that they've now slowed us down. So if you're defending, sending a division into a province and trying to get there before the attacker, even if they've kicked a bunch of your divisions out of that province, trying to get there before the attacker arrives, is a way to slow them down because they're going to have the attack delay again. So now at this point we basically wait for our attack delay to stop. So we can attack again, maybe using these mountain divisions so we don't get as much of a terrain penalty. There's a few more things I want to show you on this screen. Let's go into the combat screen here. Very similar battle. One thing you'll notice here is that my organization is 45.9. That's like basically my total. Probably 50 is the total or something like that. Theirs is actually 62.5. So they probably have a higher officer ratio, and they probably actually have decent. They probably actually have a decent infantry warfare tech. So it's going to be a combination of your officer ratio and your doctrines. Something to keep in mind, and then what you're typically in battles, often what I am watching is this. I'm just hovering my mouse over here, and if I see that this is going down by 0.1 every hour, then I know that this battle is not going very well. Obviously, this battle will be a piece of cake. And there we go. Now we move into the province. There we go. These two divisions have arrived. You'll notice that the mountain divisions arrived first. I should have checked their speed. The mountain divisions, yeah, they move substantially faster in woods and forest than the infantry divisions. They don't have any artillery. They're not as strong divisions in general, but they do move faster. So something to keep in mind. Still got an attack delay. Oh, they're under attack. This should be interesting. This is interesting because the mountain divisions have arrived faster. However, the infantry hasn't arrived. Now, when the infantry does arrive, it will be in reserve. So let's go to speed 4 here. This infantry is going to arrive any second now into the battle. 15th of December. Oh, they're not going to be there until 11 p.m. or 10 p.m. on the. Oh, looks like they'll get there like this night. So in like 15 hours. You'll notice that the time here will fluctuate, and that has to do with things like weather and all the other factors. Their movement speed is going to be affected by terrain and the weather can change, right? So you'll notice that this time will fluctuate back and forth depending on the weather modifier. I mostly. Whoa. Okay. So, okay, they actually stopped the attack. That's unfortunate. I was hoping to open that. Sometimes the AI will call off attacks simply, even if the divisions are in reserve, simply because they're afraid. They're kind of programmed to do that. Let's start another battle here. The terrain has changed. We've been fighting in wood so far. Now we're fighting in forest. Forest has a worse movement cost and attack modifier. So let's grab some divisions here. Maybe we'll just take 3 divisions, and we'll take these 3 divisions. I want to show you something else. So in the previous example, I used support attack to get these divisions to attack. However, they started in reserve. So if I want the divisions to attack at the same time while the simulation is paused, I actually order all 6 divisions, 3 in this province and 3 in that province, to attack at the same time. Now I unpause, and I'm going to see that when I go in here, all these divisions are now in the front row. Now, we do once again have a stacking penalty. Looks like we don't. Looks like we don't have a stacking penalty, probably because of my theater leader. He is a level 2 theater level, so he might just be mitigating the stacking penalty. But anyway, like I said, I personally don't bother doing the math for stacking penalties. I do check, and that's one of the reasons why that icon up here is useful. So if you do see the little stacking penalty one here, it's a little HQ type thing. Then you will, that is useful. That is a useful thing to do, to check. I want to show you something else we can do here while we're in this province. You can see that there is a fort modifier. So the fort modifier is actually minus 15.5. And the fort modifier, because this province is a level 1 fort, that modifier is really bad. If you tack like into the Maginot Line, you're dealing with like a minus 100% fort modifier penalty. So if you're going to attack a really high level fort, you're going to want to use a division that has engineers or that has a fort buster leader. I think I actually have a fort buster leader in one of these. Let's just double check here. Minus 18, minus 18, minus 10%. So Vasilevsky, I think. Where is he? It's at the core level, that's why. So the core level guy is giving us, of the first core here, is actually giving us a slight reduction of the fort modifier. So you can see how, for example, having a high level fort buster at the core level can be very, very useful to get through some of these tricky snags. This is very good defensive terrain. It's very interesting to play as Finland and defend against the Soviet Union in this situation. And if you want to succeed in an underdog situation like that, you're going to need to be looking at all these modifiers and really making the most of them. This battle is basically a foregone conclusion as well, but if I wanted to increase the odds, I could move my pathetic little World War I era battle fleet into the province here. And we'll see right away we get a new modifier, shore bombardment. Now, shore bombardment doesn't cost you anything, just having the either light cruiser, heavy cruiser, battle cruiser, or battleship, or super heavy battleship. Those are the ships that can do it. If you look in the naval stats view here, shore bombardment does not get better with technology. It's basically just these numbers. It does not improve with technology. So old World War I battleships are just as good at shore bombardment as modern battleships. I do believe that the super heavy battleship does have like 15 in shore bombardment or something. It does get a big boost, but this is not a stat that upgrades. So this is why you should never delete old battleships and old heavy cruisers. Always keep them around, even if you're not a naval country. You never know when throwing a battleship into an adjacent sea province could make the difference. If you want to double check to make sure that this province actually touches, I mean, it's pretty obvious in this case, but you check here and you see that it touches the inner Gulf of Finland. You can see the province name here. It's kind of cut off, but that's how you would check that. So shore bombardment is really brutal. It gives a horrible, this is a minus 25% modifier that we're getting. The terrain, though, is actually worse, though. So we are getting a terrain penalty of minus 25%, but we still won just because I've used overwhelming force. Okay. So one thing I did here, because I didn't use the support attack commands, these units actually will continue to move into this province, and I probably want to keep them in this one just to hold the front here. So I'm going to call off that move, and then they're going to have an attack delay of 102 hours. Okay, everyone's arrived there. One of the things I wanted to do, I should have done this a little bit earlier actually. I want to take this armored core here, and I want to show you what happens when you use something like armor in a province that's with a fort like this. So I've taken these armored divisions. These armored divisions are very basic. It's kind of early war Soviet armor. So one armor, one motorized, and one armored car. They don't have tank destroyers. They don't have engineers. They don't have, you know, other things that could make armored divisions a little bit more flexible. Because I strategically redeployed them, they have an attack delay, so that's a good lesson. You cannot strategically redeploy into a province where there is combat. What would have happened if they'd attacked me is they would have gotten stuck in this province. Units that are strategically redeploying cannot enter combats. They will stop. They will stop in the province behind. Occasionally, they will enter. They will be attacked, and they'll sort of enter combat anyway. But you can't strategically redeploy into battle. So it's not a good idea. What I just did was actually not a good idea. Let's look at another modifier here. Let's attack. Let's do a really poorly planned attack here, actually. We'll just take one division, say, for example, and we'll attack across here. And we'll see that this is a battle that we would actually lose. It's quite clear. Even though we have a much better general, we probably have better technology and things like that. The river crossing penalty is minus 61.2. We've got the fort modifier, we've got the terrain, we've got the weather, basically everything against us. Now, if we throw in... we could, if we were trying to salvage, if this battle had started and we didn't notice or something, we're trying to salvage it, well, we could throw in these divisions here. We could grab a division, maybe grab this guy here and throw him in, and maybe see if we can increase our odds here. The reinforcement chance of these ones is only 0.9, so we might go over here again. He's a fortress buster, though, so I don't necessarily want to be changing that. I could find a fort buster, right? I'm going to take this level 3 fort buster. There we go. That should increase our odds, but still, we're still having pretty poor reinforcement chance. We might win this battle, but this is a very costly battle. Probably not worth attacking over this river here, because it's just going to cost you a lot. So let's just play it out and see what happens. We've got 15 width out of 15. That's fine. See how long it took us to... I'm actually on speed 5 there. It took us a fairly long time, and this first division which entered combat has taken a pretty major hit to its organization. So, yeah, they will get across, but it's going to take them a long time. They've also got the dig-in. I didn't mention dig-in. If we look at one of our units up here, that if your unit hasn't moved, then it's sitting in friendly territory. Say this unit has been dug in for 10 days. So if your unit sits in the same province for 10 days during a war, it'll dig in, and it will get a bonus, and that's a really good dig-in bonus. Is a good bonus. I think it's 2% per day, and it increases faster if you have an engineer in the division. We can see that they're actually counterattacking, rather poorly planned counterattack. So this guy, this unit is actually in 2 battles. Let's take a look at this attack here. Now, it's pretty unlikely that. Well, see now this is actually an interesting battle, right? Because I'm sort of dicking around taking this province here. I've actually put myself in kind of a vulnerable position because now I have a stacking penalty of 39%, because all these armored divisions are stacked in this province. I didn't start my attack, so they're actually attacking me, and this could be a very costly battle. Now, we also have, if we look at which one of these divisions is in both combats, this division has a really bad penalty as well, which is the multiple combat penalty. And that's because, as I mentioned, this division is fighting in 2. Which one is it? This one here is fighting in 2 different battles. It's attacking across this river, and it's also defending in this province. So that's bad news. There's a number of things I could do here. I can take him out of this battle. Which one? There we go. So that gets rid of that penalty. But yeah, it's this battle here. Now they're attacking with some pretty weak units. So this battle. So here we go. The battle where I was crossing the river has just finished. I lost 900 troops and they lost 852, even though I was attacking with 4, even 5 divisions, and they were only defending with 1. So this demonstrates to you just how costly it is to attack across a river, to attack into a fort, to have all those bad modifiers. Even the Finnish army is not as modern as the Soviet army in this campaign. I have done a pretty decent job of upgrading all of my key technologies for my infantry and artillery. They also maybe don't even have artillery, and still they're inflicting more damage on me in a battle like this. So you really don't want to be slamming into a fortified line behind a river like that in an area like this. It's also a forest province, so that's even worse than a woods province. There's some really, attacking across something like this would be really suicide. You want to be attacking from multiple provinces. You want to have things like shore bombardment. You're going to want to use ground attacks, or you're going to want to just bypass this and go around. Now we've used brute force to get across this. River here. Let's take a look at this defensive battle, though. Interesting to see how. Okay, so they've actually given up, probably because that division isn't attacking there. The AI likes to force you into multiple combats. They probably were getting some pretty bad modifiers because we have armor in the province. The minus 30% stacking penalty is probably not enough to make them win that battle, considering they're attacking. Also, they were attacking with a garrison, which is really bad news. And also, just in general. Let's see, though, what happens if we take 5 armored divisions. That's the entire armored corps here, and we attack into this province. Just make sure I pause here so we catch the battle. Okay, so here we're going to get some kind of nasty modifiers. We're up to 12 width. And are we getting a stacking penalty? Yes. The armor has a width of 2 until you research Spearhead Doctrine. And I haven't researched it yet. So armor is at the beginning of the game. It's very hard to move armor into provinces. So we are getting a stacking penalty. The terrain penalty is also going to be pretty damn bad. Fort modifier is going to be bad. The terrain modifier here is going to be pretty rough as well. So it's not, even though we're getting a pretty hefty combined arms bonus, we have piercing attack 7 and armor 7. They have piercing attack 3. So, we've still got the shore bombardment too. I almost want to put that fleet back because it's complete overkill. But the shore bombardment might just help us win this battle. If I was to park that fleet again, this battle might not. I mean, we'll probably win it, but it might not go that well. Armor advantage. It doesn't show the modifier for the armor, but there's a big penalty that they get for having for not having a high enough piercing value. Better damage bonus. Okay, so here we can see the combat tactic here has changed. So this guy here he's actually a fortress buster, so that's actually probably helping. He's using shock. which it counters delay. They're using delay and we're using shock, so their defender damage bonus that they would normally get from this attacker damage. Sorry, they would normally be reducing our attacker damage bonus, but that's cancelled by the shock, and so now the defender damage bonuses, we're giving them a negative one. Yeah, so we're slowly winning this battle, taking a long time, but it's not particularly worthwhile to attack with armor into a fortified line like that. So I'm going to call this attack off, just to demonstrate. And let's attack with these divisions, which are going to be better, even though the armor advantage is pretty substantial. There we go. Yeah, it's actually, see, it's gone much faster. It's gone much faster. It goes much faster with infantry in this terrain type than it does with armor. Right, so now I'm just basically on speed 5. I've shown you all these I've shown you pretty much everything I want to show you. The shore bombardment, the various types of modifiers. There are a few other modifiers that haven't shown up in this battle. Once you've, at this point, I've basically broken through the Finnish defensive line using brute force, which is one way to do it. So I could have done so with much more finesse, but I wanted to show you guys kind of what not to do. This is a circumstance in the Finnish Winter War where you can actually afford to make a lot of mistakes, because at the end of the day you are going to win. You're the Soviet Union and they're Finland. But if you are Germany playing against the Soviet Union and you are using these kind of brute force tactics to win battles, it will be too costly. You will run out of manpower and you will run out of steam, and your divisions will be low on organization. We already saw that with this division here, which had quite low organization. One thing that's important to look at is the organization regain there. It's only 0.057 per month, and that's basically because we don't have... You can increase that by increasing the infantry's morale, and you can increase that with, I believe, your officer ratio and things like that. And there's also a dude here who will do organization regain. But yeah, so basically you don't want to be using those kind of brute force tactics, and that's kind of what the next two episodes are going to be about, is sort of how not to do that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. There will be much more kind of macro level strategy in the upcoming videos, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more.